Rodman was on top of the world, but once his marriage with Annie Bakes was on the rocks, Rodman checked out. He vanished and left everyone, his teammates and loved ones, fearing the worst. No one could find him or knew where to begin looking for him. But on one random night, or call it fate, one of the most wholesome, kind-hearted people in the sports community found Dennis Rodman at a strip club in Detroit when Rodman needed to be found the most. The late Craig Sager, of all people, happened to find Dennis Rodman at a strip club with a and ready to take his own life that very night. Rodman opened up to Sager, telling him about his tendencies and the darkness he was being consumed by. But Sager was right by Rodman's side to talk him out of making an irreversible mistake. He told Rodman how stupid it would be for him to do such a thing. Sager recalled seeing the and believing without a doubt that he was going to do it that night if he didn't find Rodman. As you know, Sager successfully talked Rodman down, being an unlikely friend to save his life in an unusual place. Not long after, Rodman requested a trade and was eventually dealt to the San Antonio Spurs. We all know what happens later on. Rodman soon made his way over to Chicago, where he was finally home, three-peating with the Bulls. All Craig Sager needed to do at that moment was to be a friend to save Dennis Rodman's life. When Craig Sager passed in 2016, after a hard-fought battle with leukemia, Dennis Rodman tweeted publicly to pay his respects, adding, "Thanks for saving my life when I was in dire need of help." If you enjoy watching stories about your favorite athletes, make sure you subscribe to our channel so you never miss a story on Tuesdays and Fridays. Dwyane Wade's sister took him to a movie when he was a child that saved his life. 4 months after Dwyane Wade was born, his parents were separated, with his mom getting custody. While Yolinda Wade loved her children, she had demons pulling her away from them that had control over her life. Her addiction to consumed her, detaching her from reality at times and staying disconnected from her kids and their needs. Growing up on the south side of Chicago didn't help Dwyane either, being surrounded by gang influences while his mother wasn't always around to watch him. Dwyane's future wasn't looking bright, especially with his only male role models at the time being local gang members. He saw way too much as a kid. On top of seeing his mother abusing hard drugs, he's experienced police raiding his home as a young child and seeing bodies in his neighborhood lying next to garbage cans, and this wasn't just a one-time thing. Dwyane's mom was on a frightening downward spiral while living in one of the country's most dangerous, unstable neighborhoods. But Dwyane's life changed forever one day when he was 8 years old thanks to his sister. One afternoon, Dwyane's sister Trajel told him she was taking him to a movie. However, her real intention was to help Dwyane escape the toxic environment. She tricked Dwyane into having him dropped off at his father's house, Dwyane Wade Sr. This would be a completely new environment with much needed security and structure. Dwyane Sr. was a military man, so while he could give his son the foundation he needed to grow and flourish, he wasn't the type of guy to take any crap. Most importantly, Dwyane Sr. introduced young D. Wade to basketball, a match made in heaven. Dwyane was a natural, becoming one of the best in his class and eventually one of the best high school hoopers in Illinois. While he was overlooked by many top-tier D1 programs, he eventually got an offer from Marquette. Although Dwyane lived with his father from 8 years old until he was an adult, he never gave up on his mother. Throughout Dwyane's childhood, his mother was in and out of jail. Dwyane would visit her while she was incarcerated. No matter how heartbreaking the experience was, he was there for his mom. She eventually grew desperate to win this dogfight with drug addiction. One day when Dwyane was a teen, he visited his mom while she was locked up when she made a promise that she finally would get clean and finally come watch Dwyane play basketball. Fast forward, Dwyane became a star at Marquette and an NBA prospect by his junior season. When his team went on to play in the conference title that year, Dwyane played in front of his mom, who was clean and released from jail just days before. Dwyane would go on to lead his team to the Final Four. In the summer of 2003, he was drafted 5th overall by the Miami Heat. Being an NBA player gave him the financial power and freedom to have his family set for life. Dwyane wanted nothing more than to take care of his mama. She got clean and put in a ton of work to get back on her feet and in a healthy place. Dwyane told her he'd get her whatever her heart desired, a house, a car, you name it. But the one thing she wanted from Dwyane was money for her to start her own church, a place of worship and a sanctuary for those in recovery battling addiction. Yolinda Wade got her wish and has been able to positively impact countless lives since. As for D. Wade, 16 years later, he wrapped up a Hall of Fame career with 3 rings, a Finals MVP, a scoring title, 13 All-Star appearances, and 8 All-NBA selections. An all-time come-up by the kid from the south side of Chicago. The average person attends 6 funerals in their lifetime. Demar Derozan attended nearly triple before the age of 18. Growing up in Compton, gang violence was rampant. For Demar, making it home safely from school was a blessing that didn't go unappreciated. As early as he could remember, Demar lost his family and friends due to gang violence, due to both targeted and accidental. The first that hit home for Demar was his uncle. Demar was only 5 when he attended his uncle's funeral, who happened to be one of the higher-ranked Crips in the neighborhood. His uncle was by a member of their rival gang, the Bloods, a typical cause of death on Demar's block. This was Demar's introduction into the world of gang violence. Demar's been to countless funerals due to gang and he has even witnessed the at a funeral service for someone who was during a shooting. At too young, Demar learned that while he possessed all the basketball talent and athletic ability in the world to make it to the NBA one day, he needed to make it out of Compton alive. Demar began to make a name for himself after a local coach saw him fly above the rim to jam an alley-oop as an 8th grader. Before Demar reached high school, his father was hands-on with his training and was pretty hard on Demar, for better and for worse. He'd block Demar's shots as a child and push him to the ground so he could get used to taking hits from bigs at the D1 level and the NBA. His father was tough on him, but he helped him discover that he played at his best when he was heated. Anger could be a great motivator. For Demar, it was the fuel he needed to cook the court. Unlike many of his friends, Demar had an active, caring father, and he never took it for granted. But one day, he was seconds away from losing that blessing. Demar was on a car ride with his dad to pick up his brother when his father began to swerve on the road. His dad insisted he was fine, but he was obviously struggling. He was able to drive the family home with his hands trembling. The next day at school, Demar's mother rushed in to pick up Demar early and bring him to the hospital to see his father. Demar's dad didn't talk to anyone until Demar arrived. When he saw his son, tears rolled down his face. His first words were, "I can't die until I see you make it." From then on, Demar had tunnel vision, relentlessly working to see his dream come to life. To be on an NBA court, looking up at his pops in the stands, watching his son who made it. Nevertheless, Demar had to navigate safely through a gang-controlled environment. Demar wore blue every day of high school to keep himself affiliated and safe and avoid confusion. Growing up and attending school in a Crip neighborhood, wearing the wrong colors could have had consequences. Unfortunately, that affiliation led to the most traumatic experience of Demar's life. Demar lost his best friend Dwyane Childs at the hands of gang violence. One day, Demar was at home waiting for Dwyane to come over, but he never reached the house. Dwyane was shot and killed in a by shooting over a dispute during a dice game. Demar was sick to his stomach over the death of his best friend. He was too hurt to make it to the funeral. Now Demar was more motivated than ever to make it out of Compton. By his senior year, Demar was a top 5 ranked basketball player in the nation. He committed to play at USC alongside Master P's son and hip-hop star Little Romeo. Demar went on to win the Pac-12 title at USC before making his way over to the NBA. After that season, he'd be drafted as a lottery pick to the Toronto Raptors, and the rest is history. Toronto was a new world for Demar, one he thrived in right away. Demar played 9 years for the Raptors and was a 4-time All-Star during that time, and got to shoot a commercial with Drake. But most of all, his father sat in the stands and watched his son play on the biggest stage. I'm always planning my next story, and I'd love to hear from you about which athletes you'd like to see featured on Storytime next. So leave me any suggestions in the comments. Jay Williams was supposed to be Michael Jordan's heir, but then he made one of the biggest mistakes in NBA history. Many of you now know Jay Williams as the basketball personality, but not the hooper. Jay had the world at his fingertips. He was chosen as the heir to the Air Jordan dynasties when the Chicago Bulls drafted him 2nd overall in 2002, coming off a national championship and Player of the Year award in 2001. Jay's future couldn't have been brighter. He was projected to be one of the best guards to enter the league in years. But all the hope and hype surrounding Jay Williams was suddenly lost one night after Jay got into a motorcycle accident that nearly killed him. At 21 years old, Jay Will was whipping a motorcycle around without having a motorcycle license or a helmet on, and ended up losing control of the bike and crashing into a utility pole at 70 miles per hour. Next thing Jay knows, he's waking up in a hospital with his life and career flashing before his eyes. He recklessly gambled with his life, and thank God he didn't lose it. However, the accident took him down such a dark and unforgiving depression that Jay tried to take his own life twice. Jay suffered a severed nerve in his leg, a fractured pelvis, and 3 torn ligaments in his knee, including his ACL. After all the surgeries and rehab, practically learning how to use his legs again, Jay returned to the NBA court. But he just wasn't quite the same again. Jay couldn't live with being a shell of himself as an athlete. His purpose, his life's work was gone and felt meaningless. This took Jay down a spiral that most of us couldn't survive. He was doing hard and flirting with daily. Jay attempted suicide twice. The second time was the closest call. Jay was addicted to and then chose to take his own life, washing the down with alcohol. The next day, he woke up in a hospital bed, grateful he could still breathe. When he woke up, Jay looked at the TV and began watching the anchors and the television personalities, being overcome with a sense of hope as he felt he had discovered his next play in life at that moment. While Jay Will couldn't hoop at a high level anymore, he found a new passion, chase, and purpose. The first step for Jay to build his broadcasting career was to get a foot in the door into a familiar industry. Being a second overall pick wasn't going to buy him a ticket straight to the first take podium. Jay started out as a college basketball commentator and writer in 2003. Eventually, Jay worked his way to earning a spot as an ESPN analyst, becoming a popular TV personality. Jay has joined the panel on some of the most popular ESPN shows, including First Take, PTI, and Get Up. Looking back on his mistake, getting on a motorcycle without a driver's license and flying down the street until he hit a pole, nearly costing his life, then trying to take his life again at his own hand twice, Jay has zero regrets because he perceives his past mistakes as overcoming adversity to be happy and be the man he is today. He calls that traumatic bike crash as the best thing that has ever happened to him. It allowed him to not only find a new, more fulfilling path, but his trauma also taught him that no matter how many turnovers you have, there's always another play to make in life to set yourself up to win. If you like what you're watching, hit that like button for this video so I know to keep the stories rolling. I'm not sure any professional athlete has dealt with the horrifying and disturbing trauma Lonnie Walker did as a child and overcame it to live out his NBA dream. What Lonnie Walker endured is sickening, but how he was able to face his demons head on and never letting them slow him down on his path to the NBA is remarkable. Lonnie Walker was assaulted as a child. Not only was he assaulted multiple times, but he was a victim of this at his own family's hand, his own flesh and blood. Lonnie was around more family that he never met when he was in the summer of his 5th grade year. People that he wasn't familiar with or comfortable with. Unfortunately, this summer would scar Lonnie for the rest of his childhood. Lonnie was harassed by multiple family members. One of the most heartbreaking parts of this story is that Lonnie got accustomed to it because he had no idea what was going on at such a young age. Miraculously, Lonnie carried on, living out his life to the best of his ability, building a name for himself in the basketball community, despite growing up with a massive weight on his shoulders. He could go to school year-round, be at practically every practice his entire life, stay out of trouble, and work his tail off until the day he was drafted by the Spurs, all while battling his inner demons. One of Lonnie's coping strategies included growing his hair out because he was 100% in control, giving him a strong sense of security. It wasn't until COVID that Lonnie decided to let it all go, to turn over a new page and begin a new chapter of his story, to leave his traumatic past in the past and focus on being a young, promising NBA talent with his whole life ahead of him. Lonnie decided it was time to cut off his hair. What was once a security blanket was now a symbol of baggage that he was ready to cut out of his life. Which started as a mohawk in the 7th grade, grew into a flat top by the 9th grade, then eventually curled a foot above his head, was now gone. Fans didn't understand the significance of the hairstyle change, so Lonnie posted an extremely vulnerable video of himself shaving his head filled with raw emotion. He posted the video on social media with a caption explaining why he was shaving his head and its significance to his fans, including the cruel details of his child abuse. Lonnie overnight became an example of courage and a role model for those everywhere that needed some inspiration, a reason to believe that they can face their trauma and that there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. Lonnie has accomplished incredible things through philanthropy, positively impacting the lives of impoverished communities, with the majority of the Lonnie Walker Foundation supporting communities in his hometown Reading, Pennsylvania, and San Antonio, where he resides today. Make sure you subscribe to our channel to tune into weekly stories about your favorite athletes that you want to hear but never knew.